Happy Friday. In today's episode with John Campbell, we are chatting all things live cattle market. What is happening in the world of the cattle industry right now? What is at play and what is fluctuating and pushing this market right now? And we are also diving headfirst into Trump's comments on the DOJ and potential DOJ investigation into the meatpacking industry and the Big Four and what that looks like. John's thoughts, comments, concerns, and just kind of outlook on what that could potentially look like as well. Let's go ahead and jump into this episode with John. But before we do, if you are watching on YouTube, if you could take a second to make sure you are subscribed to our channel and like this episode. And if you are listening on any of our podcast platforms, make sure you're following on that platform. Take a second to go rate and review this podcast and share it with a friend as well. Thank you for listening to another episode, and let's hear from John. John, welcome back to another podcast. How is life in La Habana, Colorado treating you this week?
It is. We just talked about it. I love how you can just go put your game face on. Go from throwing fastballs and ducking and dodging. Well, John, how are things in La Habana, Colorado? I know you better.
You do know me better. It is kind of funny when I go from my like we're chit-chatting before I hit record, and then it's like I even did the whole like hand thing before I hit record of like
you got it.
Faces
you got
on.
It down.
The face is on. Let's go. Jeez, I love it. You do know me too well, John, at this point, which is amazing and scary at the same time. But here we are.
Right. If you're scared of me, you've got problems that maybe you should seek professional help.
I mean, you're not wrong, but moving on. Let's talk about life in La Habana.
Okay. All right. We're going to get in trouble here. Let's see, 5,142 cattle this week. I thought the little light steer calves were steady. We happened to hit the right day. It's a shame that we talked this way, but Monday was a limit up day because we decided to open the government up, renewed optimism. Everybody's fired up. Those that thought the world would come to an end because of Trump's announcement may be right, but they were wrong on Monday as the futures were up the limit and, translated into our light calves, 5 1/4 up to 610. I thought our heavy steer calves probably as much as 5 higher, 420 up to 507. A kind of a rundown on the steer side of things. Here's some little 3-weight steers at 10, 4 1/4 weight steers at 530. We had some 5-weight steers at 7, kind of sounding like old times. 6-weight steers up to 420. On the heifer side of things here in La Habana, I called them 5 to 10. Was that dog? 5 to 10 higher, 450. I thought you sold him. 450 to up to $5. Heavy heifer calves 5 to 10 higher, 385 up to 440. We had some little heifers weighed right at 3, brought 530 a pound. 330 pound black heifers up to 497. We had some 4-weight heifers here in La Habana at 482, and our best 5-weight heifers back up north of $4, actually at 412. The stocker heifers 340 to 388. Again, we're talking about a 550, 60, 70 pound heifer. We had some 6 weights. Pretty good activity again this week on these replacement quality heifers. Like I said, had some 6-weight heifers up to 382. You get into the steer side of things, they were steady to 5 better. These 550 to 6-weight cattle, and these cattle are going back out. They're not going to the feed yard, but most of the high quality better end of them would bring 4 to 435, and those 6 and 7-weight cattle, 360 to 405. I think we had some 590 pound cattle bring 409. So Monday here, everything in great shape.
It is crazy how up and down, sideways, upside down, hanging upside down from a tree, monkey bar into the next one, this market is right now. Like, it is all over the place. And wow, crazy. Right?
Yeah,
like
no,
I'm
that,
glad we're up. I'm glad we're up. I'm glad it's a good week, but boy, oh boy, we've been getting whiplash over here, left and freaking right, especially since we talked last week, like, and the week before that. And boy, oh boy, hold on tight because this is a roller coaster.
Yeah, it is. There is a lot of uncertainty in the market, and you can hear that from about anybody. The markets do not like uncertainty. They don't like things holding back in the shadows that can jump out at any time, and so they act accordingly, and that's with caution.
Yeah, absolutely. What's pushing these markets right now? I'm kind of glad that some comments got released maybe after the markets closed on Friday last week rather than while markets were still open, so that people had the weekend to marinate on that a little bit before making any drastic decisions and all of those things. But kind of what are your thoughts on current events and how those are affecting the markets and what we're seeing as far as all of that jazz goes today, John?
Well, what's driving the market? I really think that reality is that buyers, producers, people that are in the business, they know that numbers are short. And, live cattle, we are not going to get from Brazil, Argentina. And if we do get the Mexican cattle, you're talking what would net an increase, say, in our calf crop by 2%. The rumor is way worse than the fact will ever be once the cattle start coming. But we're at the mercy of the rumor. The futures market, the talk, like so many things, way worse than the actual facts end up to be. But so producers know we're short, and they need to start gathering some stock up and get some calves, surround themselves with stocker cattle, get ready to get started getting cattle for grass, and that's what they do. So they've either got to let weeds grow up in the pen or lease their pastures out or do something, or else they've got to get active and start participating. And that's the beautiful thing about our industry. We've got enough players that think, I don't know what the hell the market's going to do, but I do know this is my livelihood, and I got to get signed up, and right or wrong, I got to get the hell going. So, and you see that I watched Pratt sale a little bit today, and of course, the futures are down $5 today. They were down $4 yesterday, but I was encouraged at a competitive market. Here's they sold some 540 weight steers here an hour ago for $429. Had some 6 weight cattle at $425. 7 weight calves off the cow at $349. There's nothing cheaper about that. And I just think there's a persuasion that has said, to hell with the commodities market, to hell with the government. I got to get hooked up and get going. And there's enough of them in a competitive price discovery that, that's a beautiful thing about it. I think they're going to call their market steady to higher. So that's kind of what I see going.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it goes back to some market fundamentals that we do still have demand for product. We do still have to keep the train moving and these cattle moving throughout the industry. And we have those people, like you were saying. I love those comments and that kind of viewpoint of like, we have these people that have, like, they got to run their business. Their business is buying cattle. They've got to keep buying cattle. They've got to keep the train moving and these cattle along the line. And so that is still going to push our market. That is still going to help with some market corrections, some different things that are happening. The commodities market plays such a massive role on the live cattle market, but at the end of the day, we've still got to buy and sell cattle. And so it's not just looking at the board and what is happening there, but it's encouraging to see that in the live market, in these sale barns, we're still seeing good, solid movement of cattle, and that people aren't clutching their pearls too crazy left and right.
And the nature of our business, we are so fortunate in that the composition of the people that we've got enough independently financed, independently minded people that grow their own feed, that have their own land, that They're not stupid. They're watching the markets and watch what goes on, but they are in control of their own destiny rather than to be dictated to by a higher force that's going to say, you will do this and you will comply. And that's the beautiful thing about independent producers. They get up every morning and think and finance themselves. Boy, the higher up the chain you get, the harder those guys are to find. And I'll expand on that in a minute, but we're so blessed at the grassroots level that that's the kind of people that we're made up of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like you look at the majority of our industry, and the majority of our industry is represented by those individuals that are described just how you described them, John. And it is such a blessing to be a part of an industry that is still so focused on that small producer and the importance of them. Because if we didn't have the small to mid-sized producers, we wouldn't have an industry. And I'm so grateful that we still have an industry that is able to support that and support those family operations as well, even though we're seeing a lot of that vertical integration and a lot of that stuff that we've been talking about for the past few weeks that makes it a little difficult at times too.
Right. No, exactly. And it's kind of old news by now, but short of really giving us an apology, I think Trump's statements last Friday may have been better than an apology. I mean, I don't think anybody could have scripted a statement any more to the point than Trump did last Friday, asking the Department of Justice to investigate the meat companies, stating that they're the ones that are driving up the price of beef through illicit collusion, to use his words, price fixing, price manipulation. He just said we'll always protect our American ranchers, and stating that the rancher is being blamed for what is really being done by foreign-owned packers for artificially inflating prices. And I just thought that was, that was pretty refreshing to hear it. And stating the truth, they're jeopardizing our nation's food supply. And he went on to say that, action must be taken immediately to combat illegal monopolies and ensure that these corporations are not criminally profiting from at the expense of the American people. And I thought it was refreshing to finally get a president and the USDA that acknowledges what the hell is really going on. Not just say, well, we're going to look into it, but PowerPoint presentation as to this is a result of this, as a result of this, is this. And I guess now the ultimate test is we'll see how the Department of Justice head Bondi, how their team holds up against several busloads of lawyers hired by the meatpacking industry. Usually these kind of turn into years of litigation ending with just a hand slap and $50 to $200 million fine, in which the Packers allowed to deny any wrongdoing, pay the fine, and then we just go back to business as usual. They've done this so often, Lauren, and so many times that it even has its own name now, and it's called pay to play. Here's kind of a refresher course, and I hate rehashing that, but in light of what's going on in 2022, CBS agreed to a $52.5 million suit with the grocery stores and the wholesalers for unfair pricing. McDonald's in 24 filed suit against the Packers for price fixing schemes. And it's been going on for the last 11 years. Tyson paid $85 million for a pork price fixing back in October of this year. JBS in the same thing, paid a $20 million fine. Just this year, 2025, JBS $83.5 million for beef price fixing. Tyson $55 million for beef price fixing. Cargill $32.5 million for beef price fixing. And National is still ass deep involved in price fixing scandal in litigation. And I don't know if you had to get hit in the head with a brick, but Trump says something smells fishy. It smells like a gut wagon to me. Hell, any third grade kid could read into that deal. And, they sound like really big numbers. And you hear this 52 million, 83 million. But, here is the reality of the pay to play numbers. In 2022, last time I looked, JBS has earned in that year 4.4 billion net profit. They paid 72.5 million in settlement claims, a number of them. That's 2% of their profit. Tyson made 4 billion, that's with a B, 4 billion in 22, and they paid 135 million, so they jumped right up, cost them 3% of what they made. And you talk about collusion. Is it just a coincidence that when the Packers bid one of them, all four of them bid exactly the same price every week? I mean, you don't see some at 325, some at 320, and some at 318. Every one of them bids exactly the same price, and there's a name for that too. It's called parallel pricing. And you don't think that isn't a non-competitive practice? It's no wonder they're being sued. I mean, it's wrote all over their face. And then, they used that price that they have all agreed on and had collusion on to set that price. That they bid that on 10% of the weekly volume. And that's the formula price that establishes the price for the other 90%. And, these AMA, which those that you don't know is that don't know it, are an alternative marketing agreement. And they are, when you enter into one of those, you are entering into an exclusive deal with one packer. And you commit 100% of your inventory to one packer, and then you give him advanced knowledge of the total supply available. That, I'm not saying they're all wrote that way, but the biggest percentage of them, any of the ones I've ever seen or deal with, that's exactly what they do. You bet. Here's what we're going to do, but you will commit 100% of your inventory to us. Well, hell, that's not a market. The packer can plan accordingly. Then whenever they're a little short, while they fill in with their own cattle that they have on feed, can manipulate the price with what's left. And when cattle are in really short supply, Lauren, that works pretty good as we are now. And you can get your cattle killed and have independent alternative marketing deal, and there's no problem selling them. But, when the supply increases, and we've been through that, the independents are beat like a stepchild. The packer either refuses to show up, or they'll draw you out on delivery, or else they'll not bid at all on any of the AMA non-committed cattle. You can't get a bid. I guarantee you, it happens. I've seen it. I've had it done to me. And you ask any cattle feeder that deals with these monopolies and went through the COVID, went through the Holcomb fire, and have been forced into becoming a pass-through feed yard. And a pass-through feed yard is one in which you buy the cattle, but the day you buy them, they are already committed to one packer. You have no leverage. You have no way of even testing the market with anybody else. There is no market. The day you buy them, you're just a pass-through feed yard. The packer already owns you heart and soul because you have committed to him at the end or at harvest time. You ask these guys that are in these pass-through feed yards if they wish they had other options. And I have, and the answer is yes. And they are trapped like a beaver. Like I said, in short supply, it's a quick fix. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And it looks great, and you have your ass covered for a while. Whew. I know I got a place to sell them. Now, I don't have to sit out here and wonder who is going to show up to buy them. I'm committed. And like I said, on the short term, that sounds pretty good. But look what's happening when they are the only game in town and the rules of the AMA game start changing, and believe me, it's not in your favor. The specs get tougher, the percentages start changing, and it's all in the hands of the guy that's setting the price because he's the only game in town. You know, I call it a pretty good example is getting John Deered. And, you sign up with Big Green and they control all the parts. You can't get your John Deere tractor fixed without buying parts from them. And then they're the only ones that can work on them. And after that, they can charge whatever the hell they want, but also they can dictate policy. And it's happening with them right in front of our eyes. An example would be we no longer bill. We don't have a billing process. And as a personal experience, I've dealt with John Deere, and I'm not a farmer. But I've dealt with them. I have a tractor. They service stuff. And I probably worked with them, and they've had multiple owners, but it's still been under John Deere for as long as I've been here. Well, I take my wife's lawnmower in, and now this is important. And I have a $300 belt go on this. And incidentally, this was the fourth time that I had it replaced within a matter of years before we find out what the problem is. Hell, let's just put a new belt on and burn it up every time. But now they're the only game in town. You must prepay before you can pick your lawnmower up. And no one is on site on Saturday. There's a guy there, but he's not qualified to take the check, but he's got the key to the gate. So the guy called. I said, I want to pick up my lawnmower. Can you give me a credit card number? And you have to put your lawnmower bell on the credit card because the guy with the key to the gate, he can let you out, but he sure as hell can't take your money. And they have every right to do it. That's their model. But I can guarantee you this, competition would not only make the belt a hell of a lot cheaper, improve the service, and would stop all the damn customer abuse that's going on. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the packing industry. The fed cattle market system collapsed the day the first AMA was agreed upon. Once they signed up for an alternative marketing program and we got rid of the competition, that guy should be shot, burned, tarred, feathered, and then buried, because that started the ball rolling. And, I oftentimes think we are so fortunate in the auction market business not to depend on these AMAs and these big four monopolies in order to do business. Competition keeps our business healthy. And, I can name numerous times when, as recent as the last month, when one of these big four players, they just choose not to show up. They'd be gone for a month and pulled completely out of the market. But we have enough independent producers, as we talked about earlier, and they're vast in numbers, and they fill the void, and I mean do it in a hurry. And the big boys, they're not, we don't even miss that they're not here. And that's the beautiful thing about this level of the business that we're in. But how'd you like to have your feedlot full of ripe tomatoes and they don't show up? I guarantee you, and I've been there, you will experience a full rectal prolapse, and all of the old reliable first aid stations have been shut down because you sold them out. There's no place else to go to get fixed, and you are in a world of shit. So you better pray that you're on a real good first name basis with the one you're sleeping with, and be spooned up really tight with them, because remember, they'll have no problem finding another lover besides you. And that prenuptial AMA agreement that you signed by design will take years in the courtroom to battle it out, to prove that you were right. And in the end, you lose the house, the car, the kids, but you will be remembered forever for the free all-you-can-eat barbecue.
What are your thoughts on what's going to come out of this? Is anything actually going to change?
I am encouraged because of the language but that's all it is talk. Trump did the same thing, I believe, in 20, but I think he's surrounded by a team that if we've got a shot, Lauren, this is going to be our shot. And it's no longer Purdue or these big corporate guys. I think more boots on the ground people. I don't know much about Bondi, but I like Rollins, and she gets it. And I know she gets it. And she understands what the hell is happening. Now, whether, you can gather enough evidence, and now, they're going to say, well, hell, there's no cattle out there. There's no product out there. And they're going to cry the blues, but they need to go back to COVID. They need to go back to the Holcomb fire that burned a box plant. And they were saying, oh, we're out of product. We're out of product. And the numbers will show you slaughter during that period actually increased, while there was a huge price gouging going on, not only to the feed yard guys selling them, but to the consumer as well. And look to those for pretty hard facts. But so to answer your question, I'm optimistic. I think we've got new players in the mix. But, like I said, when you got a busload of those attorneys and you're talking billions and billions of dollars every time in history up until now, they have been able to, as I said, pay to play and slap my hands and here's 100 million and I'll see you the next time you sue my ass for what I blatantly am doing wrong. And that's been the reality of it, but it was acknowledged in such a way and with such language that I am very hopeful we get something done.
Yeah, so what do you think is going to change about it? So it's like we're seeing all of these things that are blatantly wrong, that we're not having actual fair market competition. We're seeing the like, hey, you're going to set the price at 320, we're all setting the price at 320 situation. We're seeing a bunch of this stuff that is blatantly wrong. So what do you think is going to change? Like, what do you think they're going to make them do? Are they going to make them like, hey, cut that out right now? Or are we going to see some forced purchasing of plants by independent plants? Are we going to see some split? Like, what do you think is going to come out of this? Is this going to be like a, hey, here are your rules, y'all got to start following these are your stipulations, your regulations, all of that jazz? Or what do you think is going to come out of this? Obviously, again, it's going to be one of those situations that we're going to be stuck in this for years. Like, this is not an overnight thing. We're not even probably going to see anything come out of this in 2026. Like, we're talking 2027, 2028 before we probably start seeing things, because the court system, you're going to be stuck in a lot of things for a really long time. But what are your thoughts on, what could potentially happen, or even just ideal scenario situation of what you would like to see?
I don't know what the ideal scenario is. What I would think would happen, and the way to progress with it, is possibly you break it down into sections and deal with it one at a time, a problem one at a time, and hopefully accumulation of eliminating these barriers along the way will bring about a whole in the change of the industry. But to the people that say, Jesus Christ, I don't know why now we're selling cattle as we were sold in our life. Why would you be going after them now? Well, if not now, when? Hell, you got to wait to get your head kicked in again in order to do something. If anything, maybe when you've got a little money made is the time to do it, rather than when you're flat on your back, broke, and you don't have an option. But to how to go about it, I think there's a number of things that need to be addressed. And I think, okay, let's go into price fixing and let's deal with that. And what has happened? Let's talk about collusion rather than a just a dartboard deal. And let's go at them on every facet. Maybe it needs to be broke down in sections, and we're going to talk about this problem. And we're going to eliminate this problem. And once it's eliminated to our satisfaction, that falls back within the realm of what is legal and what is not legal, then we go on to the next segment. And now we're going to talk about, okay, you fix prices on this, da 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 da. Let's settle that. Oh, yeah, And you guys don't call each other, and there's no cohesion going on between all the packers, and you guys forming this collusion of one of you bids 130, the next guy bids 130, and when the trade's over, it's over for everybody. Whoa, Christ's sakes, tell me they're not sharing information back and forth, and let's deal with that. And how do we eliminate that? And it just goes on down the list to the AMAs, to where, okay, you guys have already procured X amount of the volume. I think it's in excess of 90%. What do we do to open free enterprise up with this and open competition? You get rid of the AMAs and attack from that front. And let's get out to open outcry. And maybe that means taking all the fat cattle back to the public auction for true price discovery. I'd be all in favor of that. Self-serving, you're damn right. But I think we've got a system that works, and we can prove our deal works. Again, you have to get more competition for what's out there. And it's pretty hard for an independent packer. And they say, well, we're going to fund independent packers and get them into the deal. They have no competitive advantage. The supply is tied up. You can deal on the 10% of the dummies that are out there setting the price for the other 90%. And I call them dummy and tongue in cheek. They're the only people that are doing it right. But that's who you got. That's who you got to deal with. We're not making any more cows. So where's it going to come from? Everybody else is already tied up in a deal with the packer. You have to handle it situation by situation, in my opinion, and break something up before you can go on to the next equation. So that's just my gut reaction of how you deal with it, rather than a shotgun approach and say, yeah, you guys are price fixing. Well, yeah, kind of. How much do we owe you this time? What bullshit. You got to cut the head off the snake, but it has to be handled in such a way that I don't know if our government's capable of doing it, but that's the only shot we got. If they don't do it, who the hell else does it? There's laws in place. And so let's go at them strategically and break it down into the true definition of the law. What are you doing wrong on this point? And then move to the next one. So I don't know if that's the answer, but
no, that's an interesting take,
I'm
though.
not a lawyer, but that's how I'd attack it.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting take, though, because I feel like so many people are talking about this right now that my question to everyone is like, okay, then what needs done? Like, what do we hope to see? What is the result of this? Like, and honestly, right now it's just talk. Nothing actually has gone past talking about doing this right now. And so I'm hoping that it does. I'm really hoping that we're sitting here and that this goes into an actual investigation and things get broken up, and this process is going to be a long haul, but that something changes, because we do need change in the industry. We need our packers. Absolutely. Like we're reliant on them as part of the industry, but they also need to be abiding by certain rules and regulations to make it fair. And you know what? Fair is not always equal. Equal is not always fair. And that is fine within our industry, but they gotta abide by certain rules and regulations. And there are things that are blatantly wrong that we can't sit by and idly just let sweep under the rug anymore.
Well, yeah.
And so I'm really hopeful
that's what we've done, because nobody has manned up and called them out on it. Or when they did, they said, well, maybe we're guilty, maybe we're not, but I'll just throw more money at it. And I'm making $4.5 billion this year. What the hell, 72 million? And then you pat yourself on the back and said, by God, we got it. Yes, sir. And it's back to business as normal. And we have been in that cycle for the last 20 years. And somebody's got to break the pattern. And it's not up to me, and it's not up to you. It's up to the people that enforce the laws that are in existence. So they've got to man up and take a hold. And I don't know. I still believe in your right to representation, and you got your day in court. And I guess it comes down to who's got the best lawyers.
Yeah.
Which is okay. Does. But
yeah,
at least maybe we got a shot. But I don't know. I am optimistic. like I said, repeat myself, but history would show us that, boy, we got a hell of a hill to climb.
Yeah, we definitely do. Definitely do. Any other closing thoughts, comments, or remarks that we need to hit on today, John, before we close out this podcast?
I think that's it. And you know, maybe we're finding some ground if we can somehow hold this fed cattle market, and they're trying to buy them cheaper today. But again, the supply is just not out there, and they're going to have to come to their milk and pay for these fat cattle, I think. But they've got, like I said, they've got other ways around it, and we'll just scale the kill floor back to where, well, we don't have no place to process them, so we just kind of kill them as they come. And all of those things, you think, man, how can they do that? How can they do that? The same way they can pay $72 million out of 4.4 billion. The big equation is, at the end of the day, we're still going to win, and we'll close this plant and we'll close this one and we'll throttle it down to where, we can only take so many of them. And I don't know. I don't think we can import enough beef to make a huge difference, and it's going to come in hamburger. They say it takes 7 pounds of imported beef mixed with 1 pound of ours to get 85 15 fat or a hamburger. And we're still not adding to the primals, the steaks, the roast, the high dollar cuts. When you start importing things, if we can keep the negative psychology out of it and just deal with the facts and what it is, I still want to believe that fundamentally we are as sound as we have ever been. We're not going to be able to make more cattle, physical cattle, in any time frame short of the next couple, 2-3 years. And that is on our side if we can keep everybody in business that long. So we're in a good position. We just need an even playing field. That's all anybody is asking for. So, I think the fed cattle deal, the consumer has already told us they're willing to pay for it. They're all broke, but by God, they're still buying beef. I mean, the market is telling you they're still willing to pay for it. But the packer also knows that. They know the level where they're going to cross the line at, and they'll rock right along that, irregardless of what fat cattle cost. That's a whole nother sector of the deal. They're in the meat business, and they know what people are willing to pay, and they'll spoon feed them at that level as long as they possibly can, at the expense of the feedlot guys, at the expense of the yearling and the cow-calf guy. So all the more reason to, some way, shape, form, inject a little more competition into the deal, so we're not going through these huge ups and huge downs we're seeing now.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have summed it up better. Very interested to see how this continues to shake out, how it's going to affect the market and everything else in between. And you made a really good point there, John, about the whole, like, hey, we can try and start retaining heifers, we can try and start doing all of this stuff, but we're not going to see those results for 2 years.
That's right.
At least, because are people really retaining right now at the rates that we want them to? That's a question that is really hitting people right now as well, that, hey, it's going to take 2 years to fix this problem, but we got to start fixing it right now. We can't wait 2 years and be like, oh, wait, we said it was going to take 2 years to fix the problem, and now we're still in the same boots that we were in 2 years ago.
What you have to remember is, as they are retaining heifers, that's less cattle in the slaughter mix. So we're building that adds to the shortage. So I think long term that pays benefits in the supply and demand market, which you can argue whether we're in that or not. And it's just like the Mexican deal. I think they need watching, just because of the psychological effect that they'll have when they open it. I wish they would tell us, here's our plan and here's where we're going. But the actual fact of introducing more Mexican cattle has a very, very small percentage of the entire pie. But psychologically and play on the speculative longs, you damn right it makes a difference, a big one. And we're at the mercy of that.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a drop in the bucket as far as the entire cattle industry in the United States is concerned, but we play on an emotional market. We play on a market that cares about those news headlines, that cares about the potential psychological effect, like you were talking about, that plays into all of that. So very interested to see how it all shakes out. Excited to talk more about this with you next week and see how everything shakes out for the rest of today on Thursday when we're recording this, and Friday, and see how we can sum it all up next week and see what we're shaking and rolling with there. So thank you, John, for your time. As always, to all of our listeners, thank you for being here for another episode of the CattleUSA Daily Podcast. Have a great weekend, y'all. We will see you all on another episode on Monday. Have a good one.